Larissa received a letter saying she had to go to the immigration building. Her green card process is ongoing and so she has no idea why she received a letter. She thought this letter might be a trap. She thought they were luring her down there to arrest and deport her, and so she brought along a friend. Her friend was there to call her lawyer if anything happened to her. Larissa and her friend went to the immigration building. They went through a whole process and it turns out to be nothing. Larissa wasn't arrested or detained. She has just given papers, albeit not the papers she in fact wanted, and so she's fine. She has nothing to worry about. Larissa wasn't even facing repercussions from her phone call to Jess. Jess was the new girlfriend of Larissa's ex-husband, and Larissa called her to warn her fellow Brazilian. Larissa told Jess that Colt was a player. He was a geek player, and some of what she said had gotten through to Jess. Jess remembered Colt hiding his phone. She remembered his weird relationship with that one female friend and she was worried. Only Jess didn't tell Colt about the phone call. She hadn't wanted to ruin his trip to Brazil because he was visiting with his mother to meet his family. Colt later arrived in Brazil. He was happy to be there, and so the only downer was Debbie. Debbie hated the trip almost instantly. She especially hated hearing Colt talk to Jess about baby names because she said Colt had never discussed wanting children and she believes it to be a plot from Jess. She thinks Jess wants to have a baby to get a green card. She thinks Jess is manipulating Colt, and Debbie later claimed to be ill after seeing the couple kiss. Debbie claimed she was unwell. She demanded to be taken to her hotel right then because she said she wanted to lay down, and even so she was just being very rude. Colt said his mother embarrassed him. He didn't know why she was making such a fuss, and so again he's being very obtuse. Colt's mother doesn't want to let him go or share with another woman, hence why she was being so rude. She hoped to push Jess away, although Jess doesn't seem like she's going to let Debbie frighten her off. She's no Larissa. Jess kept her good humor and they took Debbie to the hotel. They told her she could lay down. They even ignored her swearing at them. Colt and Jess wanted to spend some alone time, and so that's why they didn't mind getting rid of Debbie. Debbie wasn't going to ruin another relationship for Colt. He's happy with Jess and Jess understands his fascination with cats. Jess was in a much better position than Tanya. Tanya was married to Sinjin, and Sinjin's drinking is proving to be a problem now. He was supposed to be looking for a job. He sent out resumes and he went on interviews, but when it didn't work out for him, Sinjin fell back into drinking. He would have a few drinks after each failed interview. He would then go home drunk and stumbling. Sinjin's wife didn't want to deal with him when he was like that. She wanted Sinjin to grow up now. She has injured herself so she couldn't work and they still had bills to pay. Someone has to pay those bills or they risk getting thrown out of their very new apartment. Sinjin was also being very juvenile. He didn't want to take responsibility for his crap and Tanya was growing tired of it. She talked to a friend. Her friend Monique thinks she rushed into the marriage, and she also realizes it can't be easy with Tanya being injured. The couple took vows that said for better or for worse, and they didn't think the for worse would happen so soon. Tanya also hadn't realized that Sinjin's drinking would be such a problem. They were both young when they got together, so she thought that they would have all the time to get the partying out of their systems eventually, and that's not what was happening here. He's not ready to give it up, nor does it look like he ever will be. Sinjin was also being a jerk about his drinking. His wife tried to confront him about it and all he said was that he wasn't sure if he wanted to make his life in America. He said he came there for Tanya. He claims he would have followed her anywhere, and so the reason he's so dissatisfied now is that he wasn't sure if he should stay, seeing as he wasn't her soulmate. Tanya had mentioned earlier that she only thought she could have one soulmate and it wasn't him. It was an ex of hers. Tanya had said it without thinking and she's been trying to make up for it ever since. Sinjin would pretend to forget and then throw that in her face whenever it was his turn to be in trouble. Sinjin didn't have to do all of that. He was almost as bad as Asulu. Asulu grabbed all of his things and he left the house during his son's birthday weekend. His wife had no idea where he went. She sent him messages and he sent her to 3 false locations before she had enough. Kalani told him he had to send her the right location else she was leaving. He sent her the right location and she then picked him up. They went back to the house. Asulu stayed in the room even as the other guests to this birthday weekend celebration began to arrive. Kalani's father and sister appeared and still, Asulu hid out in the bedroom. Kalani later asked him if he was going to come out. He gave her attitude and he stayed in the room. Kalani's father Lo wasn't going to put up with that type of behavior for long. Lo puts Asulu in his place. He was from Samoa and so he knows how to talk to Asulu to get him to listen. Asulu couldn't ignore his father-in-law like he ignored his wife. Lo had wanted to go into that room and set him straight, but his wife prevented him. Lo had to promise her that he wouldn't be too hard on Asulu and he tried not to be. He was good for most of the day and then came time to be there for the birthday boy, and the boy's father still wouldn't come out. Asulu said he didn't feel like talking to anyone. He was actually going to miss out on his son's birthday party and that wasn't fair. It wasn't Oliver's fault that Asulu and Kalani were fighting. The little boy deserved and his grandfather got that for him. Lo got Asulu. He didn't put his hands on Asulu like he would have liked. He remembered his promise to his family and so all he did was talk to Asulu. He told him to come outside. He did and Asulu even put on a show for everyone. He pretended to be a happy family man and he offered to help at the party. Asulu pretended like everything was fine and it was so odd for his wife. She received no clarification on where they stood. Kalani was left wondering about the state of her marriage as Angela was landing in Nigeria. Angela got everything ready for her marriage to Michael and she even got a witness. She flew to Nigeria to make things official. They'll also take the time to learn to live together. They weren't getting the 90 days in America and so sharing an apartment in Nigeria was the next best thing. Angela was just so happy to be with Michael again that she wasn't afraid of what might come next. As it turns out, what came next was a rat in their apartment and luckily it had died in a mousetrap. Michael had needed to take it outside but first, he frightened the life out of Angela with it and it was perhaps not the best start to living together. Even if they quickly moved on, Angela had to say goodbye to her grandbabies and her mother. Her mother wasn't doing all that well. She was sick and up there in age. She needed all the help she could get and so Angela had been worried about leaving her. She only agreed to do so because she has a family staying behind to take care of her mother while she was gone. Angela fears her mother might pass with her in Nigeria and so far so good. She calls home to check in with her family and they're fine now. Angela was free to enjoy herself in Nigeria. She was doing so with Michael and so she was enjoying her trip then Elizabeth was enjoying hers. Elizabeth went to Moldova so that she could have a second marriage ceremony with Andre. They wanted their second ceremony to be in his faith because it was important that their marriage was recognized in order to baptize their daughter and so this trip was supposed to bring them closer together. Only all they seem to do is fight. Andre has been acting extra alpha male since they reached Moldova and so Elizabeth called him out on it. She reminded him that he was staying at home parent and that she was the breadwinner. She tried to tell him that their marriage was very much American and he hadn't wanted to listen. It wasn't until he was talking to his friends that it hit him. Andre and Elizabeth left the baby with his parents and they went out to drinks with his friends. His friends were all disappointed to hear he didn't have a job. They thought Andre should be working and so they weren't like him. They didn't think Elizabeth or her father for that matter should be the ones paying for everything. Andre had still tried to claim he was the head of his household. He said that he was the one leading his family and, well, His friends didn't appear to believe him. It was hard to believe in a guy when he was being a freeloader. Andre couldn't convince his own friends that he was into bum. Hell, his family would have liked to know what's going on as well, what with the couple fighting in front of them. Elizabeth was finally pushing back on Andre's chauvinistic style. She is sick and tired of hearing him complain about her family when often he's the problem. Elizabeth and Andre argued a lot in Moldova. It's like they've been saving up on these arguments with how quickly they draw them out, and so this has been building for a while now. And as Elizabeth was fighting with her husband, Larissa contacted her ex-boyfriend Eric. Eric never judged Larissa for her life choices. She misses that, and so she went back to him. Meanwhile, her ex-husband Colt and his new girlfriend Jess were dealing with his very grumpy mother. Debbie was particularly upset about the hotel room. Colt only booked one room and it was a very small suite. It, therefore, has one very thin connecting wall. It was going to be awkward with Colt and Jess having sex in one room and Debbie hearing everything, and so that too made her grumpy.